What if I told you that one studio might actually be pulling off the impossible? Merging the best parts of Mass Effect, Baldur's Gate 3, Persona 5, and Dark Souls, all within the Expanse universe. Yeah, I didn't believe it either until I saw the Expanse Osiris Reborn from Owlcat Games. This isn't just another space RPG announcement. This one's hitting way too close to home for all the right reasons. Owlcat Games, best known for their deep, complex CRPGs like Pathfinder: Wrath of the Righteous and Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, have officially revealed their next project. The Expanse Osiris Reborn, a third-person action RPG set in one of the most unforgiving and politically charged sci-fi settings ever imagined. Set during the early events of the show and the book series, the story takes place around the Eros incident, the very moment when everything starts to unravel in the Expanse timeline. The trailer closes with infected individuals aboard Eros Station, clearly signaling this game's placement at a critical point in the canon. But this isn't just a retelling. You'll take on the role of a fully customizable mercenary captain, choosing from Earther, Martian, or Baldur origins, each impacting how the world perceives you, which we'll get into later in the video. And in a unique twist, you'll also create your sibling at the start of the game, your first companion and most loyal ally throughout the entire story. It's clear Owlcat isn't just aiming to change genres. They're trying to push narrative RPG design into new territory. And honestly, this could be something really special. Now, we've all heard the pitch before: cinematic storytelling, meaningful choices, deep companions, and your decisions matter. And sure, some games come close, but more often than not, these promises fall short once you start playing. Dialogue wheels lead back to the same few outcomes. Characters tag along without really evolving, and choice? Sometimes it's just an illusion dressed up to feel impactful when the end result is mostly the same. It's not always about bad design, it's about how hard this kind of design actually is. Crafting a game that gives players genuine control, emotional investment, and branching outcomes that actually respond to their decisions takes time, budget, and a team that's willing to go deeper than surface-level systems. The sci-fi genre makes this even more difficult. It's not just about building fantasy worlds, it's about building believable ones. Political tensions, technological limitations, and survival challenges all have to feel grounded. You can't just hand-wave inconsistencies with magic. If the world doesn't hold together logically, players will notice. And when you set your game in a universe like The Expanse, the bar for internal consistency is even higher. This is where a lot of games, even big-budget ones, tend to struggle. Some lean so far into cinematic presentation that player agency falls by the wayside. Others build impressive systems but lack the character depth or narrative cohesion to make you care. The balance is incredibly tough to strike. Even some of the genre's biggest names have faced this. Mass Effect Andromeda launched with good intentions, but lacked the narrative clarity and polish that fans expected. Cyberpunk 2077 aimed for the stars, but stumbled with execution in the beginning. And Starfield, despite its scale, felt more like a collection of systems than a unified world. So when a studio says they're drawing from Mass Effect, Baldur's Gate 3, Persona 5, and Dark Souls all in one package, there's always that moment of hesitation. That question of whether it's possible to blend all of those influences without stretching too thin. And yet what gives me cautious optimism here is how Owlcat seems to be approaching it. Now, I haven't played many of their games myself, but I've followed them from a distance, and I've heard constant praise for how they handle deep RPG systems and give players real choices that matter. They've proven they're not afraid of complexity, and they've earned a solid reputation among CRPG fans for exactly that reason. With Osiris Reborn, they're not just flipping a switch and chasing trends. They're taking their time, prototyping multiple combat systems, shifting to Unreal Engine 5, and even bringing in talent from studios that specialize in third-person RPGs. Now that tells me that they understand what they're getting into. It's a big leap, but it looks like one they're preparing for with care. And in today's RPG landscape, that alone is worth paying attention to. So let's talk about what Owlcat is actually doing with Osiris Reborn, because on paper, this isn't just a new setting or a change of perspective. This is a full-blown genre shift for the studio, and they're not treating it lightly. First, they're moving away from the isometric turn-based gameplay that defined their past titles. Instead, Osiris Reborn is fully third-person, real-time, and designed for cinematic action. Not in the fast Twitch arcade sense, but in the Mass Effect style of tactically layered gameplay, abilities, and squad coordination. That alone is a massive leap, and one that comes with high expectations. To make that transition work, Owlcat didn't just repurpose existing tech or systems. They've scrapped Unity entirely and rebuilt everything in Unreal Engine 5. They also spent nearly a year building and testing multiple prototypes, 6 to be exact, before landing on a combat model they felt confident in. That's a level of iteration you don't normally see unless a studio knows how critical gameplay feel is making or breaking a title like this. Unless you're like Star Citizen and want to recreate the entire gameplay loop. They also brought in developers with experience in third-person RPGs, including talent from CD Projekt Red. Now say what you will about Cyberpunk's launch, but CDPR knows how to design tight, responsive action systems with strong narrative presentation. That infusion of knowledge should help bridge the gap between Owlcat's deep systems background and the moment-to-moment gameplay they're aiming for here. Combat isn't locked into rigid class structures either. Instead, they're using a more flexible system inspired by Dark Souls. Not in its difficulty, but in its philosophy of experimentation and discovery. You'll build your character around the weapons, powers, and skills that best match your style. Some builds will focus on accuracy and range tactics. Others might lean into tech abilities or hybrid power sets. The idea is to let players experiment and evolve naturally, rather than force them into predefined lanes. And speaking of your character, this isn't just a faceless protagonist. You'll fully customize them from the start, including choosing their background as an Earther, Martian, or Baldur. Now, these origins aren't just cosmetic. They directly influence how factions interact with you, where you're welcome or mistrusted, and how your body even looks and moves. Martians and Baldurs are physically taller and more adapted to low gravity, while Earthers are more compact. These aren't just lore details, they help ground the world and give your character identity from day one. Even more interesting, you'll also create your sibling alongside your protagonist, a same gender family member who becomes your first companion and most trusted ally. This isn't a throwaway feature. Owlcat says your sibling will play a major role in the story and relationships, giving you a personal anchor point early in the game. Now that's a smart move. A grounded emotional relationship can elevate a story in ways that branching questlines alone can't. Beyond that, you'll recruit a full crew of companions, 2 of which can join you on missions at any given point in time. The others won't just sit around on your ship, though. They'll take on secondary objectives, handle side missions, and sometimes even appear mid-mission to support you. Now that kind of dynamic party management adds a level of tactical depth and realism that most squad-based RPGs simply don't touch. Your ship, by the way, is more than a menu screen. It acts as your main hub, where you talk to the crew, reflect on mission choices, build relationships, and prep for the next operation. And yes, romance is confirmed, but Owlcat isn't going for checkbox-style relationships. They're promising deeper character arcs that evolve naturally through shared experience and emotional investment. More Baldur's Gate 3 than press X to flirt. So far, locations confirmed include Ganymede, Mars, Ares, Luna, and several belt stations. It's unclear yet how open or linear these locations will be, mission-based, fully explorable, or somewhere in between, but the promise of variety is there. All of this adds up to a system that isn't just bold. It's thoughtfully designed. It's focused on narrative consequence, player identity, and tactical flexibility without being weighed down by overly complex systems for the sake of complexity. That alone puts it on a different track than most games trying to do something similar. There's a reason the Expanse stands apart from most sci-fi universes. It doesn't rely on galaxy-spanning empires or mystical space magic. It's grounded, brutally human. Every faction in the world, whether it's the inner planets or the belt, is driven by desperation, politics, identity, and survival. And that's what makes it such a perfect fit for a narrative RPG. In most space games, you're the chosen one. The galaxy waits for your command. But in the Expanse, nobody gets that luxury. Everyone is clawing for control, for air, for relevance. That built-in tension naturally feeds into the kind of morally complex storytelling that Owlcat is known for. You're not the galaxy's savior. You're just one player in a complex web of survival, loyalty, and shifting power. When Owlcat says your origin as an Earther, Martian, or Belter will influence how people treat you, it's not just flavor text. In this universe, those identities matter. Belters have lived under oppression for generations. Martians are defined by their militarism and engineering culture. And Earthers are seen as privileged relics of a dying world. Walking into a station with the wrong accent, build, or background could get you killed, or at the very least, ignored. And it's not just personal politics. It's systemic. The idea that you can shift allegiances, play sides against each other, or even betray your own people for the greater good fits seamlessly into the Expanse's core DNA. This world doesn't hand you easy answers. It dares you to choose who you're willing to hurt and what you're willing to become in the process. Mechanically, this kind of world offers fertile ground for branching narratives, faction reputation systems, and reactive world states. And Owlcat's confirmed that your actions, whether quiet moments or major decisions, will carry weight across relationships and narrative paths. It's not about being good or evil. It's about what version of the truth you're willing to stand behind. And because the Expanse is so rooted in real-world physics and politics, everything feels tangible. Locations like Ganymede, Luna, and Mars aren't just exotic backdrops. They're politically loaded powder kegs, each with their own culture and tensions. It's a rare sci-fi universe where gravity, fuel, and who controls the airlock are just as important as who has the biggest gun. That's why, of all of the franchises Owlcat could have chosen for their first third-person RPG, this one feels like a deliberate, thoughtful choice. Not just because it's popular, but because it's designed for difficult choices, grounded stakes, and personal consequence. And if they can stick the landing, the Expanse could finally get the RPG treatment it's always deserved. Whenever a studio promises to blend so many beloved RPG systems into a single experience, there's always a risk, especially when it involves a genre shift. With Osiris Reborn, Owlcat is stepping out of their established lane. And anytime a developer does that, even with the best intentions, the challenge isn't just technical. It's about cohesion. It's one thing to draw inspiration from multiple classics. It's another to harmonize them in a way that feels natural and not forced. Games that attempt to do a bit of everything can sometimes lose their identity in the process. stretching systems too thin, or sacrificing narrative focus in the name of scope. Now, that's not a critique of this project, it's just a pattern that we've seen play out across the industry time and time again. Then there's the source material itself. The Expanse isn't built for flashy spectacle. It's political, grounded, and morally ambiguous. Translating that into a player-driven RPG requires a careful balance between player freedom and narrative credibility. If choices don't feel authentic to the universe, or if world building takes a backseat to mechanics, the disconnect will be noticeable. But what's encouraging here is how Owlcat is approaching the project. They didn't just flip a switch and pivot into action RPG territory overnight. From what we've seen and heard, they've spent serious time on foundational systems, prototyping different combat styles, transitioning to a new engine, and bringing in new talent with real experience in third-person design. That tells me that this isn't a studio chasing trends. It's one laying the groundwork. Now, as I mentioned, I haven't played most of their previous titles, but the consistent praise for how they handle choice, consequence, and player agency is hard to ignore. They've earned a reputation for designing games that don't hold your hand, and it's exactly the kind of mindset that could serve the Expanse well. Is it ambitious? Absolutely. But ambition isn't the issue. It's how you execute on it. And Owlcat, at least so far, seems to be taking the long route to get it right. Ultimately, the Expanse Osiris Reborn stands out not just for its promise, but for how deliberately it's being built. A world shaped by hard science, fractured loyalties, and personal consequence. Flexible gameplay that puts your choices at the center. And a developer that, so far, seems to be taking the long road to do it right. This isn't about becoming a legendary hero. It's a story where your history matters. Trust is fragile, and every move you make can ripple across the solar system. And in today's RPG landscape, that level of depth is something I think a lot of us have been missing. Of course, there's still a lot that we don't know, but honestly, I'd rather they take their time and get it right. If they do, this could be one of the most meaningful sci-fi RPGs in years. But now I want to hear from you. What part of the game stands out the most? The character creation, the sibling companion, the faction politics, or just finally getting to play in the Expanse universe instead of just watching it? Drop a comment below, and if you'd like to see more deep dives like this, especially into bold sci-fi titles outside of Star Citizen, let me know. I'm always open to covering more if there's interest. If you enjoyed this video and want to support the channel directly, consider becoming a channel member. Members get access to behind-the-scenes updates, priority replies to comments, members-only channels in my Discord, and also help shape what videos come next. It's a great way to keep these deep dives coming. And if you want something else to dive into next, check out my latest Star Citizen breakdown. It's packed with just as much detail and might change how you look at the verse entirely. As always, thanks for watching. Fly safe, pilots, and I'll see you in the black. Havoc out.